In 2008, Icesi University of Colombia created the Public Actions Group GAPI, a human rights and public interest legal clinic in which students and professors serve communities in need of legal services and also voluntarily assist people with disabilities. In this new program of the series Perspectives on Public Participation, Marta Lora Tamayo, Professor of Administrative Law, and Antonio Lopez, Professor of Social Work and Social Services at UNED, will interview Paula Andrea Cerón, Professor at Icesi and Coordinator of the Public Action Group GAPI, and Mario Cajas, Director of the School of Law, Government and Globalization at the same university. They will be discussing the functioning of the legal clinic and its relevance not only for the people they are helping, but also for the students. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. UNED is always there, always with this magnificent radio program. It's an honor for me to be with you again with Professor Marta Lora Tamayo. Hello, Marta. How are you? How are you, Antonio? With the new radio show that educates and informs us. And today's topic I'm truly excited about because it is key. I believe the democratic dignity of our societies is measured by how we treat people with disabilities. Our ethics are linked to how we treat those with particular circumstances that require our attention. And in this sense, with the international focus of our project, we are fortunate to have two prominent figures from Cali, Colombia, whom I'll introduce to you right away, and of whom I'm very proud. The program will focus on the projects they are carrying out at Icesi, a top-level university in Cali, promoting the integration of people with disabilities through participation. I'm talking about Dr. Mario Cajas, Director of the School of Law, Government and Globalization at Icesi University. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Mario. Good evening, Antonio, Marta. To all our listeners, we are very happy to participate in the program and having this conversation. And Professor Paula Andrea Cerón Arboleda, who's leading this entire project at the Legal Clinic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Paula. Thank you, Antonio, each and every one of you listening. Thank you very much for inviting me here. Well, I am delighted to be with you. You know that Professor Marta and I would love to be in Cali instead. We're here in Madrid, but the radio unites us. The airwaves unite us. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, Mario, how did this legal clinic project, the Public Actions Group GAPI, come about? The Public Actions Group, the clinic, emerged about 16 years ago with the purpose of involving our students and our law students at Icesi University in human rights work, in strategic human rights litigation. It was initially established as a research center, but also as a group of students and professors working with communities. So its main purpose is to provide experiential learning, to our students, but to intervene with communities, to be able to serve communities with needs for different types of legal services, legal humanitarian assistance, which later became primarily focused on human mobility and people with disabilities. But it was originally created with the purpose of strengthening experiential learning in human rights and as a public interest litigation clinic for human rights. That's the origin. And how many people work at the clinic? Well, they rotate because we have two groups of students. One is the GAPI volunteers, who may be from other semesters, but the core of the students are those who undergo their internship at the legal clinic. Just to illustrate or contextualize this for our listeners, legal clinics are the mandatory legal service bases that law students in Colombia and other Latin American countries have in their final semesters. At their disposal, they serve individuals, vulnerable groups, people from vulnerable socioeconomic conditions at different levels, areas such as criminal law, civil law, etc. So the students who come to the clinic also do their internship or gain experience in this group of public actions. Sometimes we can have 60 or 70 students in the clinic, and a group of them goes on to the GAPI. And as for the group of professors, there's the coordinator, Professor Paula Cerón, and Professor Jorge Higuera, who is the director of GAPI, obviously with support from other professors. How interesting, Mario. Paula, what are you dealing with on a day-to-day basis? I suppose the approach that starts first at university is something a bit more academic, but then contact with reality, the reality of these people, opens up much more interesting areas of relationship. What are the main challenges of the population with functional diversity in Colombia that you have discovered, and how have you tried in a participatory way to generate spaces where you can, if not solve their problems, at least listen to these people? Well, from the Public Action Group, GAPI, we have a triangle in terms of stakeholders. The first of them are the students with whom we interact, and we have a goal of comprehensive training, not only theoretically, but also practically, and to develop them as people. And the other point concerns communities, and the third one concerns governmental entities, which we consider crucial to impact public policy. And that point, the triangle at its core, which is the communities we work with, is essential. Essential for carrying out the actions we do as legal clinics. Without the communities, the students, and the power to impact social and political structures in terms of administrative management, it would be impossible. That's why I believe, first and foremost, that as a clinic, we must achieve effective coordination between this capacitation work and the impact we have on social transformation. This is where we've been able to interact through empowering our communities, especially communities with disabilities or different abilities, where we participate in government-sponsored institutional spaces. For example, disability committees, national disability councils, alliances, networks. This means that academia doesn't just start with student theoretical training, but also with structuring and strengthening spaces for participation in vulnerable communities. This allows us to provide technical support in structuring projects, programs, and plans that can be reviewed by decision-making institutions and make the corresponding changes. How fascinating, Paula. Based on your experience at the GAPI Legal Clinic, are there any strategies you can share with us to boost participation? Because the group of people with disabilities isn't a homogeneous collective, but a very diverse group with very diverse circumstances and challenges. What strategies could you share with us to increase participation of people with disabilities that have been successful with you at the Legal Clinic? I can let you know that about 6 years ago, through collaboration with the Academy of Organizations of Valle del Cauca, we were able to create the first disability policy for the department of Valle del Cauca, which is the area or the region where Cali, Colombia, is located. That was one of the greatest successes because for many years we hadn't been able to generate any impact in terms of resources specifically focusing or targeting the population with disabilities from what is called public management. You all know that it is essential to have resources and to allocate them for the population, for the different approaches we want to strengthen of our population. For example, labor inclusion, educational inclusion, inclusion in terms of recreation, sports. So the main thing is having a public policy which allocates public resources within the framework of this dynamic. So in this dynamic as such, we were able to talk with institutions through training and held workshops with organizations in Valle del Cauca about what a public policy means, how to make an impact, how to start a dialogue with institutions, and ensure that this dialogue between government and population is fun. We don't just want an unbalanced dialogue where the government speaks and the population doesn't, the government knows, the population doesn't. So we reinforced the dynamics of public policy and its concepts. We sat down with the government, we jointly structured policy, and we were able to reach the municipal council, which is where decisions regarding the region are made. And there we attended the public hearing. About 15 organizations representing people with disabilities or functional diversity participated in the public hearing. I'm using various concepts or terms used throughout the world to identify this population. Anyway, we were able to establish a departmental public policy on disability for the first time. One of the 3 major successes is how we were able to reach the national disability system and establish our presence there. The National Disability System is the operational dynamics of public policies operating in Colombia, and its main interdirector is the National Disability Council. There, we had the opportunity for the first time for a woman with a disability to be part of the National Council on Disability in Colombia. Also, she was from Valle del Cauca. All this training was possible thanks to the capacity building process carried out by Icesi University so that she could represent the interests of the area. Paula, thank you so much for this contribution and this summary you just gave us. I think Antonio shares this sentiment. We've had 40 or more programs. We've somewhat lost count of them, but to summarize or synthesize, as you've done in less than 5 minutes, the whole path followed by a small group, a small university clinic to transform a reality as complex as that of disability, and to achieve, as you say, sitting at the table, not just at the banquet table, but at the political table to negotiate and agree on a public policy. I think that is the desire of any movement willing to participate, because participation ultimately has many facets, but one of the ultimate goals is to improve the democratic system, to strengthen the democratic system. And one of the ways to do so, the clearest one, is what you've done. I think it's a spectacular example of good practices. I mean, starting from something, and I don't know if you share this, but it's a very profound lesson how from universities and from very, very specific, very localized seeds, which is capacity building among students, and this is a bit of a blame game, but we don't give it the importance it might have. If you ask me, if it's done well and with a true belief that this process can transform, you can transform the world. So truly, congratulations. And throughout this process, I suppose there might have been many obstacles along the way, difficulties. Right now, what are the future strategies? What are your future strategies? Because of course, if you've already sat down to negotiate hand in hand with local authorities and you can already propose or co-manage, co-design a participation policy in the field of disabilities, what are your future challenges? I'd like to initially suggest that Paula, who is on the ground working with our communities, of course, and with our students, initially suggest that our initial support, institutional support, I would say, has been fundamental. The support of the University of Icesi, which from the get-go was committed to the clinic and which step by step has been supporting and accompanying the initiatives emerging from the clinic, because I think this is very valuable. These initiatives of collaboration with the community, of joint work, of co-design, involve students and professors in an academic environment interacting with communities. Various initiatives are emerging to the point that we have now managed, thanks to the work of Paula and Jorge and the entire team, to access several cooperation projects, not only in disability, but also mobility, intersectionality. As I mentioned at the beginning, with an intersectionality approach, I believe it's very valuable. And to convince our students not only about rights, but also other areas of this field, this interdisciplinary work, how important it is to work with people with disabilities, to contribute and collaborate in these activities. I think that was the first challenge, persuading students of how important it is beyond their legal training, with training in different fields, they need to contribute to a better, more equal, more inclusive society. I believe that this is the first challenge, and we have overcome it. We have already a critical mass. It's almost always that first barrier. It's not always easy to have a group of people committed to this work. So I would say that this aspect of institutional collaboration and commitment from the group of people who are increasingly in charge of these projects is crucial, obviously. Paula will put it better, but working with state authorities, with government institutions is always difficult for these types of needs. There are always fewer resources for them. It's very easy, let's say, sometimes for institutional authorities to set aside participation and make top-down decisions without taking into account the people who will actually be affected by such policies. The rest of society isn't always making that day-to-day effort to achieve connection, to achieve inclusion. That's a constant challenge. I'll leave it there for Paula, of course, who has first-hand knowledge, as I've already mentioned, to expand on this. Tell us, Paula, what's next? I don't think we ask that question every day. I believe we have to make transformations and innovate every day. I believe that innovation is a key element in the work we do with communities. If we don't innovate in terms of action, strategies, and approaches to social programs, I believe we'll remain stagnant. So the proposal is to keep innovating. I think we've had a very, very interesting grounding in terms of how we should engage, how academia, which is often seen as isolated from social problems and political interventions, can be involved, and how to reach out in a non-politicized way without assuming any role, any political sentiment, but with the need to intervene, because those who don't intervene in policies are invisible. So one of the key challenges we have right now is being able to develop a project and coordinate it. We believe that one of the key pillars is being able to coordinate across organizations, across academia, across different actors to create a much more sustainable commitment over time. That is to say, we have two major challenges for next year in terms of our legal practice. The first is to continue to have an impact and do advocacy work at a national level by supporting some legislative proposals that grassroots organizations have regarding the guarantee of the rights. We will then provide support in terms of being able to translate this unrealizable desire into national laws. And on the other hand, we also have a regional project where we are part of a Latin American network on the exercise of legal capacities for people with functional diversity, or as we say in Colombia, persons with disabilities, so that it's not just an issue linked to and grounded in Colombia, but also how to impact the region, and that's how we are working. We've already been organizing with several stakeholders, not just academia, but a multi-stakeholder network where we can actually establish a dialogue on the exercise of legal capacities, the dynamics experienced in the region, and how to leverage that in each of the countries based on the comparative experiences we are living as a country. So that's what we are working towards. I think we need to transform, share experiences, and innovate in each of our strategies. It's truly incredibly interesting to hear from you, because it's very important that through education we change our perspective on what concerns us, and through university education we can prepare our fellow citizens, those who will come after us, to look at things differently. I'd like to close this very interesting show by saying thank you so much for getting up very early from Cali. And thank you for listening to us if you are. If you could give us any recommendations for our listeners to enhance participation with people with disabilities, one or two recommendations that you think have worked in your experience. I believe multi-stakeholder coordination is essential, as Paula mentioned. Well, in that regard, Antonio, Marta, UNED are experts with the projects we know of that have had an enormous impact not only in Spain but also in Europe. I think the ability to unite different actors, communities, institutional actors, not only governmental actors but also non-governmental organizations and other sectors of civil society is fundamental and has been crucial. And I think academia is key in this regard because there's a kind of legitimacy that's usually earned by academics. There are fewer barriers when you approach the community from the academic perspective to try to contribute, understand, and involve them in the various initiatives and projects. So I believe that academia is essential for coordinating these actors and fostering that participation and inclusion of people who benefit or who need or require to be a part of it and who will benefit or be affected by a given policy. I think this is fundamental, speaking from the perspective of what can be done from academia. That would be my recommendation. Great. Paula, what recommendation do you have based on your experience leading this project? Your recommendations, the first one is increasing the population's capabilities. What does increasing capacity mean? As I mentioned, it's essential to be able to train them in technical terms about what it means to participate. How can they participate? We must also increase the soft skills of those leaders who are in this process. Without these developed capacities, it will be extremely difficult for them to gain a position within the analysis and supportive, effective policies, because they will be acting from a place of ignorance, from a less favorable position than decision makers. And the second point I believe is important to strengthen is in terms of accessibility to participation and how we build universal designs that are accessible to people. I say this because people with disabilities are diverse, as I mentioned earlier, and as the word suggests, we include people with visual impairments, people with hearing impairments, and people with intellectual disabilities who require completely different reasonable accommodations and access to participation. If there are access barriers to their participation, to their knowledge of participation spaces, then we will be denying these people their right from the get-go. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paula. The truth is that these three takeaways, Mario's and yours, on accessibility, training, and the ability to coordinate various stakeholders, defines really well the challenges of participation at the global level, at local level, but also at the level of Cali, Madrid, Spain, anywhere. We need a multi-stakeholder approach. We need to be able to participate, in fact, because we have trainings, and we need to participate because in order to participate we need to be able to reach the location, to be able to have access, whether it's a physical location or a digital location. So, well, thank you very much to all of you listening to us. You already know that we have a benchmark institution for participation in Cali, Icesi, and the legal clinic GAPI, that you have fantastic people there, brilliant academics, and also social civility like Paula and Mario. And all I have left to do is wish you the best if we don't see each other before then. Merry Christmas, happy 2025, and in 2024, this is our last program. We have loved interviewing you. Thank you so much, Mario. Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year too. And of course, very grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit about GAPI, the Public Action Group, and Icesi University of Cali. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope we can work together to do much bigger things that will have an impact on the population.